We continue our week-long special looking at young people in East Asia and their struggles. And today, our focus is on Hong Kong, where an average household would need to save for nearly 2 decades to afford a home. CNA's Jojo Chan follows 2 young residents to their rented homes, where they share their dreams and struggles when it comes to housing.
如果平時想買食物、買飲品、買埋清潔用品嘅話，一個人就會有少少吃力，所以就要勤力啲嚟超市。而家咧行到4樓，我咧就住唐7樓，所以咧仲有3層要行嘅。 我大學畢業之後就因為我離開咗我嘅原生家庭，咁家庭成員有啲過咗身，有啲唔喺香港，咁所以我就自己大學畢業之後就需要自己揾地方住。咁自己住嘅話，我當時 set 自己每個月希望可以喺住屋方面嘅支出畫一條線，就係我當時收入嘅1/3嘅。咁我就大概嗰條線就畫咗喺6000蚊。咁我就要揾一個6000蚊以內嘅地方去住。你住翻市區6000蚊呢一個 budget， 咁似乎都係劏房咯，係啊。 我人工大概每個月2萬幾左右啦，咁呢一度嘅租金就係5300蚊，咁如果加埋水電嘅話，就係每個月當5500左右咯，每個月會儲幾千蚊。之後就係住7樓我嘅單位嘅廁所，其實以一個人嚟講咧，其實佢都係有啲細嘅，因為你睇下道門係咁窄啦，即係我係啱啱好可以。 係會揩到我膊頭嘅，咁佢就會成為一個花灑。咁我沖完之後就咁樣拍翻落嚟，跟住佢就係一個普通嘅水龍頭啦。
青年有未來，則香港有未來。要幫助廣大青年解決學業、就業、創業、置業面臨的實際困難。
Well, it's kind of similar to university dormitory, isn't it? Like basically, it's kind of universal. You have a pantry, you know, like where you go commute. Because when I cook here, like this whole room is going to be a smoke room, you know, like the fried oil, you know, and so that's why I only boil food in here. After my graduation, I do long for my personal space, and I do want to live among my peers. So youth hostel seemed to me was the best option of all. Apart from like renting my own place, that would be too expensive. I do think that it's a very fun place. They have all kind of activities that you can attend. It just gives you like a sense of community. Living here is quite difficult to have a relationship because you can only have like a 5 overnight visit. Like people complain about like how rigid it is with the rules. But is that enough to buy like a proper house in Hong Kong? Still a bit shy, you know, maybe with the housing market, you know, like coming down a little bit, maybe it will help, but I still can't see buying this space downtown or even here.
300幾尺買400萬，你估你要幾耐時間？ 世都買唔到。我嘅成長都係一個好被社教化，即係細個嘅時候亦都係有長輩會覺得買咗樓就係一件人生嘅其中一個成就。買樓係好安全嘅，買樓係人生好正確嘅決定嚟嘅。咁但係，然後在我畢業出嚟做咗幾年嘢，咁社會上亦都發生咗好多嘅事情。我覺得大家生活喺呢個城市，少不免會受到城市發生嘅事情或者成個氛圍所影響，亦都會動搖你過去可能一直好相信嘅一啲嘅價值。我唔會想 promise 自己之後嘅幾十年我都一定會留喺香港。如果隨時可能任何時候將來 anytime in the future， 我如果有機會離開香港嘅話，咁我一定會離開啦。咁到時我就唔想有咁多嘅負累喺我嘅手上，我要去處理。
Well, for more, let's speak to CNA's Deborah Wong and Zelina Zheng, the head of China Macros and East Asia Industrials of Credit Sites. Deb, let's go to you first. Okay, let's talk about the problem here because it's a deep-rooted one as far as Hong Kong is concerned. But you heard that young lady earlier on talk about not in my lifetime, she was saying. I mean, these are aspirations here. It's almost unattainable, it seems, to have a home or the idea of it. What's the scale of the problem?
So home prices in Hong Kong have actually dropped and transaction volume in the last few months after property curbs were scrapped in February, did lead to higher transaction volume. In fact, real estate firms also saw new home sales surge 10 times in the first 5 days after the policy change. But the problem is that it only works for people who are cash rich because interest rates are still very high and new mortgages interest rates now stands at about 4.1 to 5%. Previously, back in 2020, before the US raised interest rates, the mortgage interest rates were actually below 1%. And this is a problem because Hong Kong's monetary policy is in lockstep with the US Federal Reserve. And just last week, US also said that it will be delaying any Fed cuts. So interest rates are still expected to remain high at the moment, and that's the main thing that's holding buyers back.
Yeah, it's about affordability, isn't it?
It is.
That's at the crux of this. Zelina, let's bring you in here and talk about the situation in mainland China because there is a housing glut of sorts. A report in February says that we are seeing excess homes there that are good for 150 million people, about 10% of its population. The scale of the problem is that it impacts regional cities as well, that there is some kind of a spread there of that issue. Rising incomes just can't keep the pace of those housing costs. So what are we seeing here, Zelina?
Yeah, so I think we need to look at it in the different cities and different markets. If you look at the secondary market, there has been a lot of inventories building up, especially in lower tier cities, talking about the western and central part of China. And the situation is pretty bad. And this inventory level is unlikely to get digested, at least over the next 3 to 5 years. The situation is not going to improve because there are going to be more sellers in the market than buyers. If you look at the primary market, especially in the upper tier cities, those core districts, there is actually a lack of supply of high quality or those homes close to the working CBD areas. So for that reason, the prices of this core district is still going up. And the result is for the youth, the population in these upper tier cities, the affordability is still quite challenging. So it's a quite different situation in different cities and in different parts of the market. If we look forward, I think we are going to see continued polarization of the Chinese home market. While in the lower tier cities, there's going to be continued downward pressure on the home prices, while in the upper tier cities, the supply is going to continue to be very constrained.
Zelina, so what you're saying is that there is still going to be, imbalance in sort of housing supply in China. But I'm just wondering what kind of social impact on young families you've seen in China, especially when it comes to family planning.
I would say the situation is slightly better in China compared to Hong Kong, because if you look at the affordability ratios, such as the matrix of price to income, debt servicing coverage ratio, the situation in China is still largely better than Hong Kong. But I think it is getting worse in upper tier cities. As we all know, the wage growth is coming down, slowing down in the past few years. A lot of big tech companies, as well as some of the SOEs even, they are cutting their workforce. So the situation for the youth in this country, and also the unemployment rate, is very high. So this means even though the government are trying very hard to lower the home purchase restrictions, trying to making homes and mortgages more affordable, the situation is still challenging for youth, especially in the upper tier cities. A slightly different situation in lower tier cities. I would say overall, home is still more affordable compared to first tier ones like Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Beijing. And I think the issue there is more about housing prices coming down. The social impact is because in China, property is a major channel of savings. And now when home prices is coming down, people are thinking their wealth is coming down. So you have a negative impact on the consumptions in lower tier cities, which is not great for the economic growth into the next few years.
Deb, the pressures of the costs, I mean, it hits the wallet. It hits the amount that these young people are earning, which for many of them, they're still at that aspirational stage, right? As Zelina said, it depends where you are in terms of the impact for personal choices. But in Hong Kong, it's also having an impact too on social choices, on personal sort of choices as well. What are we seeing as far as that social impact in Hong Kong?
Well, simply put, when young couples, they don't have their own space, they find it hard to plan for a family, envision having a family, or even additional space, say for caregiving support, for instance, having a domestic helper, or even bringing in their in-laws to care for any kids. Hong Kong's fertility rate has dropped to a record low, and the government knows that. So in the last policy address, they actually rolled out this US $2,555 cash bonus for young families. They've also been prioritizing subsidized housing for couples with a newborn. But overall, the average wait for public housing in Hong Kong is still about 5.8 years. So that's a very long wait. So in the meantime, young couples are turning to the rental market, which isn't exactly affordable either. And we see that same cycle persist. So on the other hand, you've also seen in the story that just aired, some couples and some young adults are actually opting for subdivided housing, but that's still subjected to rent controls, and a lot of subdivided housing, they may not be in the best conditions. Poor ventilation, poor hygiene, cramped spaces. So the government has come up with another model, like transitional housing programs, light housing projects as well, but all these are still temporary housing models, while young couples wait for a decent long-term housing, and such as in the ambitious Northern Metropolis project. So that's still a long wait.
Yeah, there are still challenges with the other solutions, as it were. Zelina, you heard Deb talking there about the potential other solutions that have been looked at, which include encouraging development of co-living spaces, subdividing those spaces, sharing spaces, as well as the rental market. Young people still want a longer-term fix, though. Is there anything in the current measures, the sort of suite of measures that are on the table, that young people can leverage on so that they have some kind of hope here about, sort of securing a better living choices?
I think there are a few initiatives that the Hong Kong government has been taken in the past few years. The first one is really increase the availability or the land supply and housing supply of both private homes and social homes. And within social homes, there are rental homes as well as lower purchase price homes. This is similar to the situation in China. And the government has a relatively ambitious plan. So over the next few years, we are going to see about about 50,000 units of per annum supply coming to the market. And the government is also accelerating the land conversion from the farmland and industrial land to the residential land in the New Territory region. So this could be some hope for the young people. But I would say for the young people, it's still not very affordable. Even after the policy easing measures in February about the stamp duty, loan to value for 30 million above homes and stress tests on debt servicing. But if you don't even have the down payment for a new home, it is still some issues. If we look at the developer side, they are trying to push out more new launches with smaller units, and they're lowering the average selling prices. I think, as Deborah mentioned, this is also under the pressure of the elevated mortgage rates. So the developers are facing troubles of selling their homes, and they are trying to increase their cash collection to reduce debt and servicing costs. So hopefully we will be seeing some balancing point over the next few years, but I think this is a relatively big hope.
Yeah, authorities need to continue to get sort of cracking on those solutions. Deborah, Zelina, thank you very much for that.